Welcome to the Good Mood Show. I'm your host, Matt O'Neill. Be sure to hit subscribe so you get a good mood every single week. Today, we are welcoming back my friend, Mark Nepo, to the Good Mood Show. Mark had a brilliant episode in April with us called Great Love and Great Suffering. He's one of my all-time favorite teachers, authors, and poets. He is a #1 New York Times bestselling author, and he's been called one of the finest spiritual guides of our time. He was also named by Watkins as one of the 100 most spiritually influential living people. And I saw your name on that list this past year as well.
Oh,
And he was also chosen as one of the Oprah Winfrey Network's Super Soul 100. Mark has appeared several times with Oprah on her Super Soul Sunday program, and he devotes his writing and teaching to the journey of inner transformation and the life of relationship. This being the Good Mood Show, when we dedicate our lives to inner transformation and to our relationships, this is really the essence of living our best possible life. So, Mark, just an honor to welcome you back.
oh, thank you, Matt. It's wonderful to be with you. Looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to this episode. I'm also looking forward to seeing you here in Charleston, just around the corner. You're going to be in Charleston September 15th, 16th, and 17th with the Sophia Institute. Anyone who wants to attend in person, I will be there in person, or you can stream online. They do a really wonderful job with their online program. You can register to see Mark in September at thesophiainstitute.org. Mark, can you describe what those 3 days will be like?
Sure. And as you know, I mean, the content will be looking at the new book. It'll just be coming out the week before, about 10 days before it'll be published. So I'll be excited to be in person around it with all of you. And the times that we get together like that is such a blessing because we're able in real time to compare what it is to be alive and to help each other. I feel like my job in those circles is to help introduce people to their own gifts and their own wisdom. And they're just, hard to describe the kind of sharing, as you've been in them, that happens when we show up together like that. And they're very interactive and reflective throughout the weekend.
Yeah, and the Sophia Institute is such a special place. I know you've been connected to Sophia for a long time. Why do you just admire that organization so much? Why do you keep coming back?
Oh, well, Carolyn Rivers and Hank Brandt, Carolyn is the director and founder, and Hank has been involved in it since the beginning. It's a spiritual oasis, in modern times. We need these places where we can dip into the traditions of being authentic and open and kind, which have been going on forever. But with all that's going on in the world, they get quiet and lost. And I've been coming. I think this will be, my 16th or 17th year of coming back, and I just love the beautiful holy space that they open up.
When I spend time with you, I always come away with my heart wide open. Like I just want to hug everybody and love everybody. I love what you said, that it's a space where we can be authentic, because you do inspire us to just be real, to just be who we are, to be our authentic selves, to not, to be vulnerable, but to be open, and then to be kind. Today, I'm so excited to learn more from you about your upcoming book, Falling Down and Getting Up. You've said in previous events many poems that kind of talk about the essence of life is this evolution of falling down and getting up. But each time we get up, we might get up from a little higher elevation. You opened the book with a poem called Anthem, which you had said encapsulates our work here of being human. I'm going to email that poem out to everyone on the Good Mood Show newsletter. And if you're listening and you want a copy of that poem, you can download it instantly at goodmoodshow.com. by signing up for a newsletter, or reach out on the contact page and we'll send it over. But Mark, as we get into this book, why is the title Falling Down and Getting Up?
Yeah, so it goes back to medieval monks when asked how they practiced their faith, said by falling down and getting up. And I love that, and it's that really that commitment to live and keep going, not to avoid life, but what's in the way is the way, and when we face it, things become our teacher, and then we're able to discover resilience and humility, and we keep going. And in the Japanese tradition, there is a proverb that says, "Fall down 7 times, get up 8." And so this real commitment to lean into life and help each other is it's echoed in all the traditions. And for me, that's why I love this. I don't really believe in an arrived state of enlightenment. I think being human, we do fall down and get up. We forget and remember. We're afraid and then we're not. We're half-hearted, then we're wholehearted. And so the rhythm of a true journey is the practice of return. We're always course correcting. We're always coming back. And what are the practices and relationships and experiences that help us stay in that corridor of aliveness? And then I draw on, as from all traditions, have tools and practices and ways to help us live into that.
But and this is the Good Mood Show, and everyone wants to be in a good mood all the time. We don't want to fall down. And I kind of think, like you said, hey, we're looking to get to this arrived state of enlightenment, or the arrived state of heaven. Like, man, one day we're going to get to this place in this time where there's no problems, nothing goes wrong. And I'm perfect. I'm no longer angry or upset. I'm loving everybody. Like, why do you think we have this illusion that there's going to be a time where everything's perfect?
Well, I think, if you go back in time, there are even, 5,000 years ago, when there was a culture, an Assyrian culture, and there's anonymous poems in there. Even back then, people were saying, "Oh, gee, I really don't want the tough stuff. Thank you. Just let me have the good times." And that's understandable, but it's not how life works. The mystery of life, at least as I've experienced it, is the resource and the resilience and the strength of being alive comes from its wholeness. And we can only access its wholeness by being real and authentic. And that means we can't bypass a lot of this. We have to live through it. So take, for example, water. We all learn in 7th grade or 6th that water is made out of hydrogen and oxygen. And that's what makes it water. So if I'm sitting with you, I can't say, "Oh, could I have a glass of the hydrogen only, please?" Because even if you could somehow magically distill it, it would no longer be water, and it would no longer be life-sustaining and quenching. Why is it this way? Nobody knows. It's a mystery. But this wholeness of life, I think life has been made just difficult enough that we need each other to ensure the journey of love. And so, for being human, we have always, throughout the ages, cast the ideal state ahead of us. If I could just get to where there's no problems. Well, yeah, the only time there's no problems is when you're dead. So that's no, when you're alive, you're in
That's a
the
problem,
struggle.
right? Being dead is a
So that's the struggle, is how do we hold each other up? How do we help each other up? And difficult as it is at times. And let me make a distinction here. I think life by its nature, the Buddhists talk about that pain and suffering is the friction of the wheel of life. It's unavoidable. And so we have to work with it. Um, that's different than when we hurt each other. Most of the time when we hurt each other, we don't mean to. It's a mistake. It's inadvertent. I'm bringing you tea and then I spill it on you. I didn't mean to. Sorry. And the sorry is critical to growing and getting close. And it's like the linchpin of intimacy. And in the 12-step programs, one of their great wisdoms is the step of making amends. And that's good for everybody, whether they're an addict or not. And then there is evil, which I would characterize as when we hurt each other knowingly, when we deliberately hurt someone. And we can get into discussing why do people do that, and it all comes out of their own lack and pain and not facing. When we don't face what we're given, well, then it comes out sideways. Then rather than feel my own pain, I push it onto you, even unconsciously. So that's why the courage to be authentic by itself reduces violence in the world, because then we help each other rather than hurt each other.
Yeah, sometimes I hurt people intentionally. And the best thing to do is to say sorry. And then figure out, why did I do that? What was the pain?
Yeah.
What was the pain in me that had me want to get upset towards someone? Typically it'll be in the form of me going cold towards my wife. Something didn't go the way I expected and I got cold, and then withdraw, and that's intentional hurting.
Well, what's I admire, Matt, is it's so important to until you see and own these things like you just demonstrated, modeled. We can't correct them if we refuse to look at them. And that also falls under the work of being authentic, is is practicing what also the Buddhists talk about, the difficult and yet clear practice of trying to see things as they are, not as we'd like them to be, not as we want to run from things, but as they are, because then we can move through them. Then we can help each other. Then when we admit when we've hurt each other, well, then we can repair and we can say, well, okay, what can we do so that doesn't happen again?
Yeah. I'd love if you have a poem from the book. I'd love for you to share one if you would, and just let the audience kind of hear some of this wisdom you share through your poetry.
Yeah, so in the opening of the book, there is a poem as a doorway to the whole journey, and it's called "The Great Waters." In the beginning, I thought I was going somewhere. I thought we all were. But falling in while trying to cross, I finally understood the journey is to follow the river, all the rivers, especially the ones no one can see. The soul is a fish whose home is in those rivers. So I can take you across if you want, but the secret is to go everywhere by going nowhere. And I will be here when you fall in, which is not a failure, but an awakening.
That's deep, man. But isn't that so true? Like I find myself with this all the time, like trying to get somewhere.
Well, one of the from my earlier work and things that many years ago I almost died from a rare form of lymphoma, and blessed to be here. One of the great rewards, uh, just not through any wisdom on my part, just for landing here blessedly still alive, is the recognition that life is always where we are. You know, one of the things we suffer in the modern world is this menacing assumption that life is over there. If I could just get over there, then I'll be happy. If I could just get in that ideal state we were talking about a little while ago, then, or if I can just have that relationship or that job, then. And even, you know, in the whole, I think, younger generation, there's a phrase, you know, or the letters FOMO, fear of missing out. That's all about, oh, life is over there. And what great love and great suffering do for us is they reveal the secret that no, there is no there. There's only here. There's only here. So when we trip and fall down, then we're stopped from the race. And when we fall into the river of life, not trying to cross it, it's not a failure, it's an awakening. So it doesn't mean that we don't go places, but it means that we don't put off our worth or our living, imagining that I have to go over here or there in order to be alive. That's a big difference.
Yeah, we're raised to get through this grade, get through this level of school, get to the next level, get the first job, build the resume, get the next job, you know, meet the wife, have the children, work to retirement. Like it feels like life is set up like this. You're going somewhere. And then if we're fortunate, we meet a teacher like you who says there's nowhere to get.
Well, you know, I'm stunned all the time by how, if we are open-hearted, we are returned to life right where we are. And you know, and I think I've shared this in the group we were with last time, but there's a phrase, a Hindu phrase, Upa Guru, which means the teacher that is next to you at this moment. And when we are stopped, or we willingly stop, there's always a teacher nearby. Always. And often we run right past it. And again, you know, this is something we've done forever as human beings. You know, in the story of Gilgamesh, you know, Gilgamesh was a story, one of the first recorded stories in human history. It was believed to be oral for 2,000 years. And then it was written on clay tablets. Nobody knows who told the story.
This is old.
And oh,
this was before clay tablets, thousands of years before clay tablets.
7,000 years ago that is the best estimate. And
Wow.
Gilgamesh is the story of a bored and numb king who is just poking at life to just stimulate himself, just to have what he thinks is interesting because he's bored. And the line in the original translation, so what he does, he has one friend, which is this young man in Kaidu. And and Gilgamesh is bored, so he decides he's going to declare war on nature. So he summons all his troops and they go out there, and the line in the original story is he declares war on nature rather than face the undiscovered country in himself. You see how relevant this is to this day. And so of course what happens is he can't beat nature. And they lose, and in losing, he sacrifices many of his men, including his one friend in Kaidu. Mm. And so now in his grief, his sadness and his anger that his friend was taken from him, he says, well, who do I talk to? I'm the king here. Who's the king of life? Who can I talk to to ask for him to be brought back. And the Assyrian name for God was Utnapishtim. And so Gilgamesh goes on a journey, a long journey, to go and meet the immortal one and ask him to bring his friend back to life. And so this story carries a lot of things we've been talking about, because along the way he goes on this long journey and he's told by someone, oh, okay, you're going to come across these stones, and you need them to show the ferryman who will take you across the river of life so you can have an audience with Utnapishtim. So Gilgamesh goes, yeah, okay. And 3 times he comes across the stones, and once he smashes them out of anger, once out of sadness, and once out of arrogance. And finally, he arrives to the ferryman at the river of life, and the ferryman goes, oh, Gilgamesh, yeah, I've been waiting for you. Where are the stones? He goes, the stones, oh no. So he does manage to get it. So again, if we don't look at things, and if we inadvertently break things rather than face what is ours to face, we just keep repeating.
I think the beginning of the story is so relevant too. He wanted to conquer nature, and he sacrificed everything for it, including his only friend. And this is relevant for me wanting to conquer my goals, conquer success, or conquer finances, or conquer my fitness. And then what do we sacrifice to go conquer this thing? A lot of times
Well,
I'll
yeah.
sacrifice my presence with relationships that matter a lot. Like, oh, if I could just grind through this, if I could just push through this, I can reach this goal in the external world. And then the whole while the river of life was just flowing past me. And just like the stones that Gilgamesh discarded and destroyed, I could have been destroying everything that was precious to me.
So we're all, uh, these are points in the journey that all human beings face. And it's our turn to ask, will we choose love over fear? Will we live now and not defer life for some imagined goal? Will we help each other up? You know, there's another parable that's a Buddhist parable that's relevant today as well. And so there are 2 monks, and they've been told if they study long and hard, they will be able to have an appointment with Buddha on the top of this mountain. So they study very hard, and after actually a couple of years, they think they're ready. So they set out and they start to climb the mountain, and halfway up, one of them breaks his leg. So the other one is intending to keep his appointment with Buddha, but tend his other if he can. So they spend the night, but in the morning, the one who broke his leg isn't doing very well. He's got a fever, and now it's not so easy to just leave him. And so the parable stops there and asks, what would you do? And when we have more people who will keep their appointment at the top of the mountain than care for their broken other, we have an age that engenders cruelty.
Yes.
When we have an age where more people discover that tending their broken other is the summit, we have an age that engenders compassion.
And that's the Buddha within.
That's the Buddha within. And it doesn't matter what you put on the top of the mountain, as you were saying. It could be fitness, wealth, security, family, God, your version of God, whatever it might be. When we insist on keeping the appointment that we've put up there, so much that we walk by the living, we're watering the seed of cruelty. And we face this choice every day, each of us.
What makes it easier though is when we choose love over fear, we get rewarded by feeling amazing because loving feels so good, right? When we choose compassion over some external goal, that also there's a reward there. It feels amazing. So there's this, I feel like we have a guidance system built in our hearts that when we choose presence today to be in this moment with the person who's with us, the teacher in front of us, that presence is the gift of life. And when we put the presence off and we are kind of driven by this insatiable desire to accomplish more and more and more, that there's no peace there.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, there are other some of the rewards for kindness. One, of course, is relationships are deepened and are more intimate. And on a whole nother level, when we're kind, the word kind shares the same root as the word kinship and kindred. And so when we are kind, it's almost like an admission ticket to the experience of oneness. The reward, another reward for kindness is our heart opens and is now able to be touched and touch beyond us in all directions.
You know what I've found the more and more kind I've become? People are not unkind to me ever. It's crazy. When I was younger, I was very arrogant. I thought I was the smartest person in the room and no one could do anything as good as I could do. And I wouldn't delegate because they wouldn't do it the way that it needed to be done. And a lot of pride. And people were mean to me all the time. Like there was always arguments, there was anger, the people would come like strangers, just people, like I was just attracting this animosity towards me. And it kind of felt like, that's just how the world is. People are cruel and mean and you just have to deal with it. And as I've grown, I've been on this journey of continuing to become more kind. Those people aren't around. They're around somewhere else. The strangers that come up are the kind ones.
Absolutely. And I think we all find our way to this. And some of what, going back to the frame of the new book, Falling Down and Getting Up, when we honestly engage what's before us and help each other, then falling down and getting up over time actually becomes a dance. Again, no one likes to fall down, but when we fall down and get up enough, we start to recognize, oh, I see what's going on here. It doesn't mean that we won't fall down again. We will, because we're human, not because we're stupid, not because we're evil, just because we're human. And that's what happens when you're human. And so we are this very humble mix of the spirit, the human being. The being is infinite, the human is very finite. And so, we're like lightning in a bottle, and we're constantly being moved by that spirit within. And then we have these very human tools to work with. And so we will know the difference. We will. It's inescapable. One way to think about this is it's a metaphor that our spirit is like, imagine a hawk. Imagine a hawk and a horse are going through life together. They're tethered to each other. That one can't go without the other. And the hawk just flies. So it sees where it wants to go and it says, hey, let's go. Vroom. But the horse says, wait a minute. You just can fly. I got to go over that bridge and I got to go over this, down through this gully. And then there's a all this fence with barbed wire. How am I going to get around that? Wait up. And the one can't go without the other. So the spirit, which can see and feel things instantaneously, has to be patient for the human that carries it. And we can't judge ourselves too harshly when we see, I want to go over there, but I can't get there quite yet. Well, that's because the horse is tethered to the hawk.
I haven't learned to forgive well enough yet. Yeah, I haven't learned compassion yet. Yeah, but the hawk needs the horse, right? The spirit needs the human, because that's all of the learning, all of the growth happens from falling down. And so the
Well,
spirit
and
needs to be tethered, so because that's where the spirit gets enriched, is in these human experiences of making a mistake and figuring it out.
yes, and the hawk, the spirit, it can see the earth, but it can't know what it is to be on the earth except through the horse.
Mm.
So it can watch life, but it needs the human to experience life.
To be life. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you titled part one of your book "The Way of Learning." Can you talk a little bit about what the way of learning is about?
Yeah, and I call it that, and let me share a quote that as an entry to it. I quote this Chinese philosopher Mencius. He lived in 300 BC, and he, as best we can know, what a wonderful heart-centered guy he must have been. And this is what he
Mark, we've lost audio.
learning is nothing other than this:
Mark,
searching.
Mark, would you mind starting over with that quote from Mencius?
Yeah.
We lost audio for a few seconds.
Oh, sure, no problem. So the first part of the book, The Way of Learning, really comes. The phrase comes from a quote from Mencius, who was a philosopher, Chinese philosopher from 300 BC, and his quote goes like this: "When chickens or dogs wander away, people know enough to search for them, but when their hearts wander away, they don't. The way of learning is nothing other than this: searching for the heart that's wandered away." And so I love that as a wonderful way to understand true education. Living education is the way of learning is, how do we find our heart when it's lost? How do we awaken our heart when it's asleep? How do we heal our heart when it's wounded? And if it's too big to do alone, then I got to call you up.
I need your help.
Yeah.
That's
And
what
so this,
I was sharing that story before we got on this podcast. The last time I saw you in April, I was going through a very hard time. And really just spending time with someone, with you and with the Sophia Institute community, who are so open and kind and loving, was part of my path to healing, because sometimes life's challenges are bigger than we can really handle on our own.
well, I think, one of the things there's a chapter, and I so appreciate, Matt, your sharing all of that from your journey. Um, there's a chapter that I explore in the new book called "The Endless Vows," which we will look at more closely in the weekend at the Sophie Institute in September. But what that is, what I call the endless vows, there are four vows that if we engage them with real heart, they will always return us to what matters and help heal us. And they're as simple as they are ancient. The four vows are: help, thank you, I'm sorry, and I love you.
Mm.
help, thank you, I'm sorry, and I love you. And no, like, and we'll have a whole session during that upcoming weekend where we really explore these in depth. But we suffer. Let me back up for a second. So you know how every person has particular gifts and they have particular areas where they struggle, whether it's a shadow or a liability. And the same thing with cultures. If you look at the continents and the civilizations as big personalities, they have their particular gifts and their particular struggles. And when we learn from history, we want to put together the best of every culture. Well, in the West here, which goes back to Greek times through Europe and England, and then finally here. So we have more than any other culture developed the understanding of a self. And that's been, at its best, that's very rewarding. We really understand how each person works. However, the liability or the shadow of that is that we have mistakenly think that we're independent, that we're self-reliant, that we
We're
don't
not.
need anybody.
We're not. We don't exist without everybody.
Exactly. And so, yes, we need to be able to say help. We need to reach out to, as you shared just for yourself. And I knew of certainly in my cancer journey, people, I was raised Jewish. And now, because of my journey, I have a great tie to the Jewish heritage, but I'm a student of all paths. Because during that time when I almost died, I had people from all faiths, formal and informal, offer me some kind of kindness and help. And so, when I was struggling like that, I didn't have any prerequisites. I didn't say, well, let me see, do I believe in what you're offering me? Like I'm going to take a ticket and see if they pass some test. No, I said, I know I didn't, believing in it was not a prerequisite. I just needed to say, help, thank you, and take it into my heart. And then on the other side, still blessed to be here, I was not and am not wise enough to know what worked and what didn't. So I believe in everything.
That's so cool. I wanted to close the loop on the Gilgamesh story. So
Sure.
he gets to the other side of the river to meet with God and have this appointment. What happens?
Well, thank you for bringing that up. So he goes across the river, and in his sadness and in his arrogance, he goes to Utnapishtim and he says, I demand you. It's too hard to be without my friend. Bring him back to life. And the immortal one, Utnapishtim, looks at him and says, how dare you? You're human. You will struggle to remember and to forget. But I am immortal. I carry every one of your losses and griefs with me forever. I can't forget. And you're demanding of me, get out of here. And so he sends him back into life. And this journey that he has taken, in heavenly time or otherworldly time, it seems very quick. It was like a few weeks, but when he gets back to Earth, it was years that he was gone. And now he's an older man. He's all suddenly old. And now he walks around, crying out the name of his lost friend that he was responsible for in Kaidu. But now there are younger people who they heard about a war with nature, but I don't remember that. And who the hell's in Kaidu? Who's this guy? He's just yelling his name all the time. And so it's this humbling, he's returned to life and life goes on, and he's responsible for the harm he has done.
Well, and that's one of the best moods, humility and humbleness. I've written a book I was telling you about the last time I saw you, called Conquering Bad Moods. And the first part is about conquering the 8 most destructive moods that we can face, that we'll continue to face always because we're human. But part 2 is choosing good moods, and the first good mood that I've placed in that is humility.
Yeah. And humility is a wonderful opening because humility comes from the word humus, which is the earth, soil. So being humble is being reconnected with the earth, being reconnected with everything that's larger than us. And very much, when you stand on the earth, so being humble reconnects us with everything that holds us up. And when we can do that, then and accept help and be kind, then it goes both ways. Then what holds us up makes us stronger, and then we can pass it on to someone else.
Each morning when I meditate, I do my best to keep as much of my body touching the ground as possible, because of that humbleness, to just be connected to the earth, to where I've come from, where I will return. And it's a very physical manifestation of humbleness and humility to what is greater than me. So there are 2 other parts to the book. The part 2 is deeper teachings. What does this get into?
Well, there that, and I should say about the whole book, because I want to acknowledge, my publisher, Joel Fontanes, at St. Martin's, and he's just a wonderful guy. And this book really came because he kept asking me this wonderful invitation. He was saying, you teach so much and you are in these circles. He kept asking me, what would a book, like if someone couldn't be in one of those circles, what would the nearest thing look like in a book? And what an invitation. And so it was out of that invitation that I began to shape this book from many of the, the favorite sessions from all the teachings I've done over many years. And so the center of that book, The Deeper Teachers, is about fear, pain, and grief, which, no, we have a misnomer, just as we talked earlier that everybody, we're taught to look for these ideal things. Well, we're also taught to run from the deeper teachers. And the truth is, just like you can't bypass gravity, everyone who ever lived will experience fear, pain, and grief. The only difference is, so when we have like I have chapters in this book, it's we're just talking about it. We're just bringing it out into the light. So, when people are hiding from it, they want to say, oh, that's depressing. Why do we have to look at that? Well, everybody experiences it. We're just talking about it. That's all. And when we talk about it and listen to each other and share our experience, it lightens it. It lightens the burden, and we help each other through. So the center of the book focuses on those 3 deeper teachers: pain, fear, and grief.
And if we can talk about it and someone lightens our load, hopefully we can be there when someone else is facing one of those 3 teachers and help lighten their load.
Yeah, and I think this is for me the vow to, what's important is to be real, which is healing, more than quote positive.
Sure. Yeah. Fake positivity, a couple smart words that we think will help them get through it. That doesn't help anybody.
No, we need to acknowledge what each other is going through and ask for the wisdom of the person going through it. I think that's something that
Powerful.
I've learned. Yeah, I've learned from the places I've been in. Yeah.
So you said ask for the wisdom of the person going through it. How does that look in the real world? So somebody's going through the loss of a dear loved one.
Well, how that happens is whether you're ill or whether you're suffering or whether you're going through grief, it's as if those journeys we are we are without any choice, we're led. Imagine you're climbing, you're hiking, and you are drawn into a very difficult. It's not even clear if there's a path, and you have to make your way up this steep climb to get to this summit that's out of the way. So, and it hurts to do it, and you might scratch yourself up, you might fall down. So then when we meet, I want to say, wow, well, what was that climb like, and what did you see? You're looking now from a place the rest of us haven't yet seen. What can you share from what you've learned? And I think that it helps to treat experience like that. You know, what do you learn for what you've been through? And that it's not a deficiency that we suffer, it's an experience that we grow by. And therefore, we say, yeah, you've lost, you lost your stepdad, and, my father, I lost about 8 years ago. What do we see for having loved and lost? What do we know now that we didn't know then? What can we report on from having lived a bit deeper now than before we loved and lost?
This for me is the biggest teaching of today. This asking the person who's walking through the challenge to be our teacher rather than to try to be their teacher.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You know, there's a book by Jacques Luceron, who called "And There Was Light," and he was a young man who, at a very early age, he fell as a schoolboy, 6 or 7. He fell on a corner of a desk, and he hurt his eyes. He went blind.
Wow.
And then he lived in Paris, so he was like a teenager when the Nazis occupied France, and he was part of the resistance. And the whole book is about that, how he could see more deeply than those around him in his darkness, in through his blindness. He was actually, when they had to discern whether people coming in the resistance were infiltrating, could they trust them, he was the one who sat and interviewed people to say this person's okay or not, because of the deeper sight he had after having lost his sight. And so it's a memoir. The whole book is about the first part of his life, and through that time. Yeah, what is the wisdom and gift that comes from what we've been through? And everyone has that. Even, I think elders today, it's important to ask people who, at the end of their lives, in their last phase of their lives, what do you see? What do you know from having climbed the long hill of your life? What can you share with it? They're not just, disposable because they're old, sitting somewhere in assisted living. There are stories and unbelievable journeys you couldn't imagine until we ask.
One of my favorite all-time books is Tuesdays with Morrie.
Ah, yes.
I just love that Mitch Albom took the time to go sit with his teacher on the last year of his life and just ask him what he has seen. And Morrie shares he'd seen a lot. He'd seen a lot. And you know what he said? He said, there's nowhere to get. Just the way the show started. He said, I'm not able to walk anymore, but I could sit on this chair and look at this beautiful maple tree out of the window. And the fact that I can just see this tree just lights my heart up.
That's beautiful. Absolutely.
Mark, I've just loved this conversation. I'm so excited to read your upcoming book, Falling Down and Getting Up. If you're wanting to have a copy of the opening poem anthem from the book, just reach out to us at goodmoodshow.com. We'll send it over to you. And if you're wanting to join me and Mark in Charleston, the dates are September 15, 16, and 17. You can do that online or in person, and just go to thesophiainstitute.org. And Mark, if anyone wants to reach out to you or get more of your work, how would they get in touch?
Yeah, so thank you, Matt, and thanks for this conversation, as always. So folks can go to my website, marknepo.com or live.marknepo.com. And the website will have all the places where I'm teaching and the kinds of things. And the other will have live.marknepo.com has my webinars that people can sign up for.
Yeah, you can tell from this show, Mark is one heck of a great teacher. You're going to want to spend as much time with him as you possibly can. Mark, thank you so much. Just an honor to spend time with you today here.
Oh, thanks, Matt. Thank you. I'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Absolutely. And thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week.